What if the singer who saved a band was also the one who erased it? Tom Johnston built one of America's greatest rock bands, then a bleeding ulcer took him off the road. His replacement was so talented, so utterly himself, that Johnston couldn't find room in his own band when he returned. The song they almost didn't finish won the Grammy for Record of the Year. This is the story of the rescue that destroyed the Doobie Brothers. It began, as so many California rock stories did, in a place that had no business producing legends. San Jose, 1970. Not Los Angeles. Not San Francisco. Just a working-class pocket of Northern California, where guitarist Tom Johnston and drummer John Hartman scraped together a band they called PUD, a loose, noisy, motorcycle-friendly outfit that played wherever anyone would have them. There was nothing polished about it, nothing calculated. It was survival music, played by young men who had nothing to lose. The band found their earliest audience at a rustic mountain lodge, a venue that had lived several lives, from stagecoach stop to speakeasy to outlaw hangout. Mark Brown, the band's longtime guitar technician, later said that a place like that could never happen again because the people who made it possible could never happen again. Local police avoided the property entirely. It was raw, lawless, and completely authentic, exactly the kind of environment where the Doobie Brothers were born and shaped into something real. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. With the addition of guitarist Patrick Simmons and bassist Dave Sjogren, the lineup locked in. They adopted the name Doobie Brothers, a nod to their fondness for marijuana that Johnston admitted they deliberately kept quiet during the Nixon years, fearing backlash and scrutiny. The name didn't matter as much as the sound, and the sound, right from the beginning, was unmistakable. Twin guitars, driving rhythms. Johnston's ragged, road-worn voice riding over a groove that felt like an open highway with nowhere particular to be. They weren't chasing trends. They were carving their own lane through a musical landscape that hadn't quite figured out what it wanted to be yet. By the early 1970s, they were delivering hit after hit that became the permanent soundtrack of a generation. Listen to the music. China Grove, Long Train Runnin', Black Water, which gave them their first #1 single. Each song felt lived in, honest, and completely of a piece with the rest. This was not a manufactured band. This was a brotherhood, and you could hear it in every note. Johnston's voice was the band's identity, not just in the practical sense of being the lead singer, but in the deeper sense that his tone, his phrasing, his working-class grit gave the whole enterprise its soul. Remove his voice, and you had a fundamentally different band. That vulnerability was lurking beneath all that success, and it would prove catastrophic. Through the early and mid-1970s, the Doobie Brothers built something rare in rock and roll, a momentum that fed on itself. Each album delivered, each tour expanded their audience, and the band's reputation as a can't-miss live act drew the kind of loyal following that radio hits alone could never manufacture. They were playing to the people who made America run: factory workers, truckers, ordinary men and women, for whom a great guitar riff was not background music, but a genuine lifeline. What made them special wasn't any single element, but the combination. Johnston's percussive rhythm guitar locked with Simmons's melodic counterpart to create a texture that felt simultaneously tight and loose, disciplined enough to be professional, ragged enough to feel dangerous. The rhythm section gave everything a propulsive urgency, and the harmonies, layered naturally rather than engineered, rewarded close listening without demanding it. These were songs that worked in arenas and worked just as well coming out of a truck radio at 60 miles an hour. They were also, in the best possible sense, a working band. Not stars performing at audiences, but musicians performing with them. The motorcycle culture that surrounded their early days gave them a blue-collar credibility that their peers in the Los Angeles Canyon scene couldn't easily replicate. Their fans didn't just like the music, they identified with it. They felt seen by it. That kind of connection is not easily built, and it is even less easily replaced once it's been altered. By the mid-1970s, the hits were stacking up in ways that seemed effortless from the outside. But inside the machine, the relentless pace of touring and recording was quietly wearing the foundation thin. 300 days a year on the road will do that to a band. It hollows out the individual men even as it builds the collective legend. The strain accumulated slowly, invisibly, beneath the surface of every sold-out show and every gold record, until the foundation finally gave way in a Memphis hospital room. In April 1975, during a grueling national tour, Tom Johnston was hospitalized with a severe, bleeding stomach ulcer. The diagnosis was serious enough that his return was uncertain. The tour could not simply be abandoned. Venues were booked, contracts were signed, and the machine had to keep running. So the band turned to guitarist Jeff Baxter, who suggested a former bandmate with an extraordinary voice named Michael McDonald. What followed would change everything. Michael McDonald was not, in any conventional sense, a Doobie Brother. His musical DNA ran in an entirely different direction. Where Johnston's voice was raw and driving, McDonald's was soulful, sophisticated, almost orchestral in its richness. Where Johnston's songs were rooted in the California rock tradition, McDonald's compositions drew from rhythm and blues, from gospel, from the complex harmonic vocabulary of jazz. These were not small differences. These were fundamental ones. McDonald met the band at a hotel in New Orleans, spent 2 days rehearsing in a warehouse, and walked out onto the stage. For those 2 days in a sweltering warehouse, he absorbed the band's entire catalog and delivered it faithfully. The tour was saved, but Johnston's recovery was slower than anyone had hoped, and when he remained unable to return for the band's next studio sessions, producer Ted Templeman faced a much larger decision than anyone had anticipated. Patrick Simmons pushed him to listen to McDonald's songwriting. Templeman was hesitant. He told Simmons it would be safer to keep Simmons on lead vocals to maintain familiarity with their audience. Simmons pushed harder, so McDonald sat down at the studio piano and played a song he'd written. The song was "Taking It to the Streets." Templeman's eyes went wide. Simmons watched the producer's face shift, and later said Templeman began mouthing the words, "Oh my God." Bass player Tieran Porter heard McDonald sing for the first time and said the moment his voice came out, his mind was blown right there. The label's executives were initially panicked. They were deeply leery about any change to the lineup. Their concern was commercial, and it was legitimate. The Doobie Brothers had a formula that worked, and introducing a wildly different vocal identity was a gamble. But Taking It to the Streets became a hit, and that changed everything. That was where the trap closed quietly and without fanfare. McDonald wasn't trying to take over the band. He simply could not help sounding like Michael McDonald. His musical personality was so fully formed, so distinctively his own, that every song he touched moved in his direction. Keyboards moved to the center. Rhythms grew more supple and complex. The harmonies became sophisticated in ways that required his voice to make them work. The twin guitars that had defined the band's identity shifted quietly toward the margins. When Tom Johnston briefly returned to the lineup, he felt it immediately. The band he came back to was not the band he'd left. His hard-driving rhythm guitar style, the very thing that had made the early records feel like controlled acceleration, was now out of sync with the musical environment McDonald had created. Johnston departed quietly in 1977. There was no dramatic confrontation, no public dispute. He simply recognized that the band had moved into territory that no longer had room for what he did best. The rescue had succeeded. The transformation was now irreversible. What followed was something the music industry had rarely produced. A band that achieved its greatest commercial success in the aftermath of an identity crisis so fundamental it should have destroyed them. The Michael McDonald era of the Doobie Brothers did not limp along on goodwill. It dominated. The 1978 album, Minute by Minute, stood as the culmination of everything McDonald had been building toward since that first piano demo in the studio. And at its center was a song that would define not just the album, but an entire era of American pop music. What a Fool Believes had an origin story that matched its ambition. McDonald and songwriter Kenny Loggins wrote it in a single day, with Loggins drawing inspiration from a piano riff he heard drifting from McDonald's yard. The song's melodic DNA reached back to the pop craftsmanship of the early 1960s. but its harmonic language was entirely modern. It was a record that seemed to arrive fully formed and then proved almost impossible to actually capture on tape. The band spent 6 exhausting days at the recording studio attempting to nail down the right rhythmic groove. The sessions produced boxes of 2-inch master tape piled literally to the ceiling. The repetition ground everyone down. Band members began snapping at one another. Eventually, they walked out of the sessions, too depleted to continue. Templeman was left with mountains of tape and a song that still hadn't found its final shape. In a moment of desperation, he manually spliced different takes of the physical master tapes together, a high-stakes edit that could have destroyed the entire recording. He also played drums alongside Keith Knudsen to achieve the slightly loose, organic feel the song needed. When the final version was assembled, McDonald was so emotionally worn down that he refused to listen to the mix. Templeman delivered the master to the label's executives with an almost comically blunt warning. He told them it was a piece of crap, but he would play it for them anyway. What a Fool Believes reached number 1. It swept the Grammy Awards in 1980, winning Record of the Year, Song of the Year, and Best Arrangement Accompanying Vocalists. The Doobie Brothers had achieved the kind of recognition that most bands spend their entire careers chasing, and yet the ceremony carried a bittersweet weight that the trophies couldn't conceal. The members knew, even as they accepted those awards, that they had arrived at this peak by traveling so far from their origins that the journey back was no longer possible. The records were selling. The problem was that fewer and fewer people recognized the band making them. One side looked at the Grammy wins and saw evolution. The other looked at the music and saw replacement. By 1980, the internal weight of carrying 2 incompatible identities simultaneously had begun to crack the band's structure. Several longtime members departed, their exits quiet but unmistakable in meaning. The Grammy victories and the platinum sales had not resolved the fundamental question of who the Doobie Brothers actually were anymore. Creative fatigue, which had been building beneath the surface for years, finally became impossible to contain or disguise any longer. Their 9th studio album, One Step Closer, reached the top 3. But the supporting tour exposed fractures that chart positions couldn't paper over. Drummer Keith Knudsen, who had joined during the band's classic mid-1970s era, later spoke with honest candor about what those final months felt like. He said there were deep differences of opinion on which direction to take the music. They simply could not agree on a path forward. He also acknowledged something more important and more difficult, that they had nothing truly new to offer anymore, and that continuing to perform out of commercial obligation would have been deeply unfair to the people who had loved them for more than a decade. That was not a small admission. It was the kind of artistic integrity that was easy to claim and genuinely difficult to practice, especially when a band has mortgages, managers, and momentum pulling in the opposite direction. The Doobie Brothers practiced it, and it cost them the band. In early 1982, founding guitarist Patrick Simmons stepped away to pursue solo work. Without Simmons, who had been the single thread connecting the band's original identity to its later incarnation, the one musician who had stood with a foot in both worlds, there was nothing left to hold the two eras together. The decision to disband followed naturally. The Doobie Brothers did not collapse in fire. There were no lawsuits, no bitter public accusations, no tabloid implosions. The end came quietly, with the dignity of men who understood what had happened, even if they couldn't fully explain it. Their 1982 farewell tour ended at the Greek Theater in Berkeley. Simmons made sure every former member was invited back for the final shows. During the closing encore, original frontman Tom Johnston walked onto the stage alongside John Hartman, Tyron Porter, and Michael Hossack to join McDonald and Simmons for a 12-piece performance of Listen to the Music. The crowd responded with tears. Both versions of the band stood together for one song, and then it was over. The Doobie Brothers didn't collapse because they failed. They collapsed because they had quietly become two completely different bands at the same time. No organization, however talented, could sustain that division indefinitely. The strangest part of the Doobie Brothers story did not happen while they were together. It happened 5 years after they were gone. In 1987, drummer Keith Knudsen organized a benefit tour for the Vietnam Veterans Aid Foundation, a cause close to his heart and to the hearts of the band's core audience. The idea was to bring together as many past and present members as possible for a series of charity performances. What Knudsen discovered was that the appetite for the Doobie Brothers had not faded. Audiences who hadn't thought about the band in years showed up with an emotional investment that surprised even the musicians themselves. The demand was not passive nostalgia, it was something closer to urgency. What that tour revealed was genuinely unexpected. Both eras of the band were beloved. The old Doobies and the new Doobies were not competing versions of the same thing. They were two distinct chapters of the same story, and the audience had room in their hearts for both. The argument that had torn the band apart turned out to be, from the perspective of the fans, no argument at all. That discovery led to a permanent reunion of the classic 1970s lineup without McDonald, who had moved on to a successful solo career. Their 1989 comeback album, Cycles, marked a genuine return to the guitar-driven rock identity that had defined their early years. It produced a top 10 hit in The Doctor and confirmed that the original sound had lost none of its power. But the most emotionally significant moment connected to Cycles had nothing to do with chart positions. During the 1987 benefit tour, while performing at a children's hospital, the band met a 17-year-old classical pianist named Shannon Aikesty, who was battling terminal Ewing sarcoma. Shannon played music alongside them during hospital visits, and she carried one final wish to play on a real rock record before she died. Patrick Simmons arranged for a mobile recording unit to be brought directly into her hospital room. Shannon recorded the keyboard part for the track Take Me to the Highway with the full commitment of someone who understood exactly what the moment meant. She passed away in 1988, before Cycles was released. A clerical error omitted her name from the instrumental credits, but the album carried a heartfelt dedication to her memory. Michael McDonald went on to achieve the kind of solo success that confirmed every instinct Templeman had the day he first heard that piano demo. He remained one of the most distinctive voices in American music, so singular, so fully formed, that no band could contain him without being reshaped by him entirely. And that was the truth at the center of this story. McDonald did not destroy the Doobie Brothers through ego or sabotage or bad intentions. He simply could not help being who he was. His genius was not compatible with the band's original identity, not because either was inferior, but because both were too strong to share the same space without one of them giving way. The rescue was real. The transformation was inevitable. And the irony, painful as it was, remained among the most elegant in rock history. The very thing that saved the Doobie Brothers was the thing that made them, in the end, impossible to sustain. Most bands had been destroyed by failure. The Doobie Brothers were nearly destroyed by their own brilliant reinvention. The Doobie Brothers left behind two complete legacies, and that was rarer than it sounds. Tom Johnston's guitar-driven California Brotherhood and Michael McDonald's blue-eyed Soul Revolution both earned their place in the story. The music still moved people who first heard it on a car radio on some summer night they never quite forgot. If you grew up with either version of this band, drop your memory in the comments. Like and subscribe for more deep dives into the music that defined a generation.